Is there one sweet one that I must reach for, then I'm done? Is perfection a place or just a glimpse at hard work's face? Space? What does he say there?
I think face. I think that it feels like face to me.
Well, welcome back to A Musician and a Filmmaker. We're here for our second episode with Animal Collective superfan Ethan Woods, a.k.a. Walked Like a Dog, a.k.a. the madman behind Reaper Madness. He's not mad. It's just, I like wordplay. We're here to talk about ODDSAC, which is the 2010 Animal Collective visual album, which came out a year or so after their flagship album, Merryweather Post Pavilion, and so many normies saw that and went, what the fuck is this? I don't like this band anymore. They suck. But we didn't have that reaction, or at least when we discovered it. I mean, again, you guys were around when that was happening, so I'm sure. And Jordan, you have some history with this particular audio-visual work and interacting with the band. Can you tell us the story? Because this ties into the logo of our podcast. The picture of Jordan in our logo is from this work. So go ahead.
Well, not entirely. There's a couple different stories I think you're mixing together there, Greg, but it's okay. I can tell a couple stories here. So one was that ODDSAC released, on DVD, and there was one record store in Toronto, Criminal Records. They haven't existed in a really long time. But they had ODDSAC DVD for sale at their shop. So I'd known about it coming out, but it wasn't like I was like, I figured it was going to be something hard to get my hands on, so I wasn't like seeking it. But I just happened to be walking down. It was in like Queen Street West here in Toronto, and I was walking down Queen Street, and I look in the window of this record store, and I see the DVD sitting there, and I was like, oh my God, like, they actually have it. That's awesome. So I went in and I bought it, and the guy's like, yeah, like Deacon from Animal Collective is like literally playing a show tonight right across the street. And I was like, what? It's like, yeah, it's in like 3 hours or something. And I was like, what the fuck? And it was at this weird place called the Snowball Gallery, which is like an sort of open art space that, gets rented out for people to just, put up their art or whatever. It's basically a tiny room. And I think it like cost probably $10 to get in or something like that. So went in, like, Josh.
That's still how much it costs to get into a Deacon show, by the way.
I mean, sadly, yeah. But
when you only have 8 songs, what more do you expect? Anyway.
Yeah, Deacon is just like, I walk in, he's just sitting on like a beanbag, like in the front of the art gallery, just like hanging out with people. I was like, this is so weird, everyone's drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, like hipster to the, the hippest degree. And, but that, I think, Greg, you're confusing that photo that I have on the cover of our podcast is not from that interaction I had with Deacon. That was from, years later when Deacon came back to Toronto with, Gang Gang Dance.
Oh.
But the other connection...
Okay, so maybe I'm just inventing a memory out of thin air. Did you not host a screening that one of them came to?
No, I hosted a screening for Tangerine Reef.
Oh.
Yeah, not ODDSAC.
You never did an ODDSAC thing?
I did. I interviewed Danny Perez about ODDSAC for the 10th year anniversary. Yeah, in 2020.
Oh, I gotta rewatch. I don't know if I've ever. Is that a print interview? Is there a video somewhere? I don't know if I.
No, it's a print interview. I was writing for this horror website called fearforever.com, and it was an audio interview that I transcribed and still up there. It's a long one, but it's good. There's lots of interesting stuff.
So I did just invent a memory. In my head, that picture is of you and Deacon after a screening of ODDSAC that you were like, "Hey, I got my local theater to show it," but I guess that was Tangerine Reef, and he was not there.
You just you timeline jumped. You're from a different timeline where that happened.
I'm kind of like Dr. Manhattan, where I'm seeing the present, past, and future all at once, so it all gets jumbled up in there.
Yeah. Oh, that's rough, man. That sounds.
And hard. I have a blue penis, but that's neither here nor there for the discussion.
That's a medical concern, actually.
I've got one of those too. No, mine's red.
It's a circulation thing, but
yeah.
You should
Anyway.
get them to the hospital.
Is this one of the things that's going to make the cut?
I'd say
maybe
it
if we
should.
linger
It
on it
should.
long enough and we can't cut out of it, we'll see.
Talk about an odd sack.
So, ODDSAC is a gummy candy. It's also a visual album by Animal Collective.
I didn't know it was a gummy candy.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Apparently that's what they named it after. I don't know if it was just like a local thing or like what, but I remember Googling it and finding a picture of it.
Is it one of
Is
those
it spelled the
candies that
same?
has like?
Yeah, I think so.
Does it have like goo in the middle? Is it one of those kinds of candies? Because
I want to say it's just like those Coke bottle things.
Okay.
Or like that kind of gummy.
I'm seeing nothing on the internet to support this, Greg. I think this is also a fabricated.
No.
interview.
It was in the Wikipedia article. And that means it
Timeline
has to be
jumping a
true
lot.
because you have to cite all your sources. Or maybe it's just not there anymore.
I'm looking it up.
There's literally nothing about it.
Oh, come on. I know I didn't make this up. That was someone quoted the band by saying that they named it after a gummy candy.
Yeah, it's conspiracy. I like this conspiracy. Like it was a candy, and then maybe the band like went through and systematically deleted all traces of it. So you don't. Whenever you search ODDSAC only, the movie would come up.
Hey, it's Future Greg here. I'm editing the episode, and I'm interjecting because I want to actually prove that I'm not crazy.
I am not crazy!
And this candy thing didn't come out of nowhere. It was a quote attributed to the band. Let me cite a source right here. So they did an interview for The Guardian in 2010 to promote the album. And here's a quote. The title, says the band's Dave Portner, is sort of a reference to the fact that we all like gummy candies like Haribo gummy bears and thinking about creating this really messed up pack of candy. So there you go. I'm not crazy. I don't remember where I read that originally. Maybe it is still on the Wikipedia article and I didn't find it in the 5 seconds of me scrolling it when we were recording the episode. So yeah, I mean, it is a thing. I wasn't just making it up, but I will take the L on the previous thing about Jordan and the screening and all that. But anyway, back to the episode. Oh, goodness. My brain has just been, my brain is a fried vamp right now.
Hey,
ODDSAC, what was your guys' first experience with it? Obviously, Jordan, you found the DVD. What did you ever get to see it on a big screen? Because I think the surprising thing about this is that it premiered at Sundance, which maybe not so surprising with the clout and hype that they had going for them in 2009, 2010. But like when you think of something premiering at Sundance, you don't think of this weird, abstract, Lynchian music audio combination. Because it's not just like a traditional visual album where like, you know, you have all your songs already recorded and then maybe if there's any other noise, it's something that was you added in from when you shot it. And it's just like I always think of like Beyonce's Lemonade, you know, like you get to the end of the song and then it's just like the sound of the city driving by or something. And then the next song starts over whatever B-roll. But this was like, they went back and forth. Like Animal Collective had stuff they brought to Danny Perez, the director, and then he had stuff that he brought to them, like visually, that they added audio to mix and match, and it all. From this time rewatching it, I really did notice how many things, I'm sure they were intentional, like synced up, just like the flashes on the screen and how like the interplay of the two, like the image and the audio were constantly like, almost like fighting each other, but it all works.
It seems, everything I've read makes it seem like it was extremely collaborative. I think the band's even said that they kind of just considered like Danny and like the visuals on this record as like another member of the band. Like it was like
the fifth instrument. Yeah.
The fifth instrument. Yeah. And it is like, well, it's like also, just thinking about the Sundance thing. It's like so funny. Like in retrospect, it kind of makes Merriweather Post Pavilion feel like the Animal Collective's Trojan horse in a way, where like they just like catapulted into notoriety and then suddenly like through that notoriety just like got to inject their pocket of the mainstream with all of their freak. I'd been a fan at this point for a little while, so like I kind of knew that, you know, that other side of them, but it was like really delightful to see like all these like new heads like starting to get into the band, and then all of a sudden they put that out and people are just like wait, what is this? Like, this is not like, like reverb drenched pop. This is something really scary and weird.
Well, I also like to imagine, had you heard about Animal Crackbox before this?
I don't
Because that was like
remember.
late 2009 or something like that. It was the same year as Merryweather and Fall Behind and all
Oh,
that.
was it really? Yeah. I mean, I guess I had, but I didn't listen to it for a while because I don't think anybody had uploaded
Right,
like
because
any
it was a
cuts from it
vinyl
for a
only.
while.
Yeah.
But my friend
It still
Jamie
is.
had that on vinyl, so I eventually heard it. But I think it was like that was like for me it was like a while after I'd seen ODDSAC that I actually heard those songs. But yeah, I'm sure like people who were like, "Oh, this band's awesome. I'm going to pick up this like collector's vinyl," and then they got to hear like the recording of Wee Tigers on Crackbox and being like, "Oh my
Which is
god!"
all the way back to like the Holland again Dance Manatee era, and just being
Yeah.
like, "This, when are they gonna sing My Girls?"
Totally.
You know?
Like, why are they screaming into distortion pedals?
Oh, they made
Well,
a
I
movie.
think-
Let me boot it up and see what this first scene is. Oh my god, this is terrifying. There's swirling fire. There's a man in an alien mask. There's black goo pouring out of the walls.
Yeah. Oh, it's unreal.
It's funny though, like when it was being announced that they were making a movie, because I remember then I was a bit more active on Collected Animals, and like, people were like, "Oh yeah, this is," word on the street is there's an Animal Collective movie coming out, and it's so funny because like me and my friends who are also into Animal Collective, for some reason we didn't expect it to be this, and it's so weird because this is like what you would expect it to be, like an
Totally.
experimental film, but like it was so funny because in our heads we were like kind of envisioning almost like there was going to be like an action movie or something, just starring like all the,
It kind of
Josh
is.
Ginn as Deacon.
There are some
Aviar
action
as
scenes in
AV
this.
Tear.
It's like the Italian Job but with Animal Collective.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, what's this movie? Like, what's the Animal Collective movie?
That's
And then
so
it came out. I
funny.
was like, oh, of course it was going to be this.
Right.
I don't know why we were thinking otherwise, but
Yeah.
Well, it is great that they had Danny Perez to sort of tie together all their sort of disparate concepts and ideas. Like, I remember the Lady on the Lake, or is it Screens is the one where Deacon is in the rowboat? And
Yeah.
he's just, they said that was literally the entire idea. They're like, all right, we just have this idea of Deacon as a sad vampire in a boat, and he's rowing towards the camera, and Danny's like, yeah, and what else? They're like, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not a sequence. You can't just do that. That's one shot. You have to do more. And so they probably I don't know who came up with the story of turning him into a malicious vampire who, does he use magic to turn the marshmallows in their mouths and into like some weird Cronenberg monstrosity that consumes them, and then he drinks their blood?
Let's talk about that scene. That scene is like, to me, is the scene in this movie visually. Like, there's a lot of really good things in this movie, but that is like by far the image that's like, however that image came to be, that's like the takeaway image. It's so good. And the Cronenberg reference is right on, Greg. Like, it's like, just like seeing the way that the marshmallow, like they can't get it out of their mouth and it starts filling their mouths, and the music's
It
kind
just
of
turns
like
into this like
siren.
weird growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
That like consumes them.
It's like truly disgusting. It's like it truly grosses me out to this day when I watch it. And then like it's, to me, I guess I always interpret that scene as like, some sort of like Deacon's like, you've fallen for my trap, my weird marshmallow expansion trap, and now I'm going to drink your blood.
Well, it is because there's also that sequence before in Lady of the Lake where the mom of the family is like cleaning this weird like thin fabric in the water. There's a weird recurring theme of people washing strange objects in water in this. And then like you'd see like there's a whole thing where Deacon Vampire is like sort of sneaking through the woods and like comes upon her by the riverbed, and maybe that's where he gets the idea that she has a family, and it's like, ooh, fresh blood,
Right.
But and then of course it's great that immediately after he gets melted in the sun, he gets his immediate karma for killing this innocent family. I would say that's actually more disgusting to me than the marshmallow scene, is him melting in and all the like practical
pulsing.
effects they have coming out of his like the what do you call it, the latex bald cap on his head. It is like smoke pouring out and like paint. He said, I remember him saying that was the most miserable day he's ever had, was filming that scene, because he's like, it was hot, it was the summer, you're in this like sweaty marsh, and I'm rolling around in the water, I've got long robes on, I'm covered in makeup, and there's all this like weird sticky shit just like pouring out of my head. It's like I was absolutely miserable, but it looks great.
It looks so good. Yeah, that scene is also absolutely incredible.
I love how much, like, it's no secret that A.V. Terror is influenced by David Lynch, so much so that Pull Hair Rubbi, his 2007 album, was directly referenced. He's like, well, I saw Inland Empire, and I guess that inspired me to reverse the whole album. And then you watch Inland Empire, you're like, there's barely anything reversed in this movie. I don't know what you were going off, but... So there's a lot of, like, I feel like that mixed with the fact that both of these were shot on, like, DV cameras in the mid-aughts, really just, it has a sort of similar aesthetic. And they both are almost, I would say, as coherent as each other. Where Inland Empire, there is sort of a plot, but also not really as it goes on. They're like, yeah, well, don't worry about that. It's more about, like, the vibes. And that is kind of what this is. But there is also just, like, I don't know, for some reason, like, after seeing Inland Empire, these are, like, lumped into my brain now, just, like... And maybe it's because I spent 2 years making a documentary unrelated that also had a bunch of DV footage in it. Maybe I just grew to, like, attracted to that look, or maybe it's nostalgia. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there are definitely moments in this that play out straight up like something out of, like... Lost Highway, the one where the guy, like the creepy bald guy with the large eyes comes up to the guy at the party.
Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of like one of Avi's costumes in this, where he's like in red robes and he's got the white face paint, and he's like,
when he's like, I am the Saturn entertainer.
Right, but nothing he's saying matches up even remotely to the audio.
Yeah.
That was very Lynchian to me. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again.
Yeah,
but that was one of the things I noticed on this. This is probably my 10th time seeing it over the years. I think the first time I saw it, I was in college, and I had been given something that I thought was acid, but instead it was some weird research chemical on a blotter tab. So I took that, and I thought, oh man, you know what? It will be perfect to help calm me down during all of this, because I think that was one of the only times I've taken something and like legitimately tweaked. To like the point where I was like doing some of this, like just weird, like skin rubbing that you shouldn't be doing. And so I was like, oh, I've never seen ODDSAC before. This will be the perfect time. I'm on psychedelics. Play. And I get through Mr. Fingers, and I get to the point in Kindle Song where the spooky Geo faces are popping up, and I just like slammed the laptop shut. I was like, no.
Yeah.
So
Can we talk about like the
I came back to it
characters
eventually.
that all four of them are? Because they all kind of like it's funny because like this time especially, I feel like I've always remembered the movie as like really much more collage-y, and it is like certainly extremely collage-y, but there are these like very weird consistencies throughout. Like Geo is consistently this like weird like knight in like muscle suit armor character.
Yeah, it's like this fabric thing he's wearing.
Yeah, and like Dave's always like kind of covered like red and has like these red and white like kind of satiny glittery outfits on.
Whatever that mask was from, is it in, I guess it's in the beginning and the end in Mr. Fingers and what happened.
Yeah, this like kind of like bunched fabric mask.
Did you ever see someone remade that for Halloween? Like 2 or 3 years after the movie came out, they like recreated that. They just like, I studied images from the movie and recreated the weird like fabric construction myself, and it was pretty doggone accurate.
That's so sick. I would love to see that. And then like Noah's just Edgar.
It's Edgar.
Is like which is a really funny bit of like only the heads will get this one, you know? Like, and
he's playing the drums on the I think it's supposed to be a riverbed, but it's so dried out that it's just a bunch of rocks.
Right. Right.
No, it's an alien planet. The whole thing is supposed to be an alien landscape, they said. It's like, I didn't know they had humans and dogs on alien planets, but here we are. I do love that the one dog in the movie is just credited as dog in the credits. Like, I think it was Deacon's, it was either his dog or like his sister's dog or something, but
you're like, dog was dog.
Every other character has like a name, and then it's just dog.
Yeah. My friend names her animals like that. She's like, this one's cat. I'm like, dude, come on. Give him an identity.
Well, that's what I'm going to say when I call for him anyway, so what's the point?
Yeah.
I feel like a large recurring visual Like, I feel like if you wanted to recreate scenes from this, all you'd have to do is just get people with like shop lights in the woods and just have them go like, because I don't know if you guys saw that when they did the 10th anniversary stream, but they did like a featurette of the making of ODDSAC, which like footage that we had never seen before. But Danny, because he was presenting it, cut it together himself and like interviewed people that worked on it. And that was a big part of it. It was just like very run and gun, like, you know, we're going to set this light up, but then you have this like big flag thing that you're just going to wave in front of this. And that's your only job for the next few minutes, you know? And it's just like this small crew just doing this like indie fly by the seat of your pants kind of filmmaking that really comes across. Because not only is the editing like super hyper cut, but it's also like the actual visual information you're getting from each cut is also like madness. So when you edit it all together, it's like this perfect soup of insanity that only Danny Perez can accomplish in this world.
And he's like it's still unreal to me. I mean, that's fascinating. I really want to learn more about that featurette too. But like, Danny is like so perfectly suited for Animal Collective's music. Like so especially watching it this time, I was like, and they were like so collaborative, obviously, but just like it's so 1-to-1. Like there's this sort of, one of the thoughts I was having this time around was like the theme of goo in the movie. Like there's so many scenes where like goo is overtaking an image, or like even like visual static kind of having this like weird liquid quality that's like overtaking
this
the
movie is
entire
disgusting.
Image.
It's
so
absolutely
liquidy.
Gross.
And
everything
really
is sticky and dirty.
And it kind of reminds me of like the whole Animal Collective thing, because it's like, I mean, like they're one of the things that's always like fascinating about them is that they are like pop writers. Like they write songs, and they write songs that have like structures and hooks and everything, but they're always like their music is always like at the verge of being overtaken by like static and goo and all these dissolving agents.
Right. And I remember I showed my brother Tantrum Barb once. He's like, why does it sound like it's underwater? I'm like, well, if you watch the movie, this makes perfect sense.
Totally. Yeah. This movie is like so extra in this way, but everything, like the images, the sounds, the songs are like always like just threatening to be completely submerged. Like there's
especially Green Beans, which goes from this like calming little ambient like synth movement, like little loop, which I've always thought would be a great way to start their concerts, is just with like, and have them walk out on stage with that. But
that's
I guess
a cool
we'll see.
Idea. You guys listening out there, do it.
Bleep 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 bleep. I think my favorite moment of just like the overwhelming noise on the album is Fried Camp. Yeah, is the one where it's like just like that super fast synth arpeggio.
Yeah.
Bleep 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 bleep, and it's just like it totally, and then it just turns into this like driving like Dustin Wong kind of beat. Yeah, it's great. Even like when it gets to the Mess Hour House segment where it's like this weird fucked up cooking show with this alien and these it almost seems like they're hostages. I don't know what the women are supposed to be in that scene, but they all seem they waver between enthusiastic and terrified to be there.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the What Happened number, they're just like writhing around on the ground covered in like flour and dirt, and just it's a lot. It reminds me of the Brother Sport video. I would not even be surprised if those were shot close together or like even on the same sets, because there is definitely like a like DIY filmmaking, not just overall, but like when it comes to the actual like construction of like the room from the beginning. I'm assuming it's all just the same 3 walls, not 4 walls, no Adobe slats, but it's like the same 3 wall, like sort of diorama almost set. And that is sort of like illustrated at the end when it zooms out and you just see this tiny little box in this field of darkness.
What are your guys' favorite music and visual combos in this movie, where the two really just sync up so perfectly?
The one that's always...
Go ahead, Jordan.
No, let's say it at the same time.
Mr. Fingers.
Sorry. We should count. I was going to say Kindle Song.
Yeah. Well, there you go. The 1-2 punch of those two. Yeah. Both of those are really, really fantastic. Like even just like the color palette in those two strikes me as being like, yeah, these are orange songs, you know?
I think Tantrum Barb is actually my favorite of them, or if you combine Working and Tantrum Barb.
That's a good one too.
Even with the jump scares and Working, which thankfully they left out when they brought him back to the in 20 was it 22 when they did that? Yeah.
I kind of wish they would do it live, the jump scares. That's like my favorite part of the Working song. It's so twisted. It's like,
Well, now that we're on this topic, how do you guys feel about, because there are certain things that the band said years ago that they end up changing their minds on, like, you know, they're still consistent about they'll never put Campfire songs on vinyl. But the thing with ODDSAC always seemed like we were talking about earlier, how the Danny's visuals are like the fifth instrument of the movie or of the whole thing. It's like you can't have one without the other. You can't have the audio without the visuals, which maybe for the whole thing is true, but for the individual tracks, like the ones that are more, you know, structured and less sound collagey, you definitely could. And that's what they did when they did Working and Screens, just like a stripped down guitar accompanied version on the Time Skiffs tour.
yeah.
How do you guys feel as fans about being lied to? They said they would never perform them live without the visuals, and they didn't. They performed it live without the visuals.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
You want to take this one, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I personally
it's an
loved
impossible
it.
question.
You know, it's like I'm, you know, in the camp that I do wish they released it as like a vinyl or something. You know, I like the option. Like I like that Tangerine Reef had the option, and it's always irritating to have to go to YouTube to like listen to the song, because sometimes, you know, I do want to just listen to the songs without the visuals, because I'm doing something else, you know.
Well, if you're a cool guy like me and you have Apple Music, you can add your own files with just a little bit of work.
Is this paid promotion?
Yeah.
No, it's just I hate
your-
Spotify, so I'll always find
This'll
any
be your-
excuse I have to shit
This will
on
be
them.
your will that be your first corporate sponsor?
Going right for the big one.
Yeah.
Apple,
Start
right
on
off
the
the bat.
top.
Well, we lost our Blue Chew and our Dude Wipes sponsorships. Our first corporate sponsor is going to be the ODDSAC candy, if we can ever
Oh
track it
yeah,
down.
yeah. We'll bring them back from the grave.
If it is in fact real and not something that I dreamt
we'll
up
invent
9
it
years
ourselves.
ago.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you though, Jordan. I think it's, I mean, I'm kind of like not I'm pretty anti-precious just by way of my personality. I feel like, I don't know, you know, like if you made the stuff, just make it widely available. And it seems like their attitude has changed a lot too since they did play those two songs. And I'm kind of still holding my breath that they'll play Mr. Fingers live, because that one's like maybe like one of, in my opinion, like one of the best songs they've ever penned. It's just
Especially if they keep the
unbelievable.
hurdy-gurdy around, you could very easily arrange that for whatever
And
aesthetic they have.
And they also, I mean, you know, not to like point out how hypocritical they're being, but like,
No, let's do it.
But like, I remember when this record was being teased, they released Mr. Fingers and Screens as early MP3s that you can download off of Gorilla versus Bear. So it was like already,
So they were
already
immediately
like,
hypocritical.
yeah, they were promoting the whole movie with like singles without the visuals. So
Well, I think
I
it
don't
speaks
know.
to the larger ethos of it. There is this weird contradiction that they have where they're like, you know, we make our art the way we like it. We're not going to compromise. We're not going to pander and just do something because it's commercial. But at the same time, they don't like to keep things super consistent for very long.
totally.
So, you know, you can say in 2010, oh, we'll never play it live without the visuals. But then 12 years pass and you're like, fuck it.
Totally.
They'll like hearing it live. They'll go crazy over it. So
Yeah,
and they
totally.
did. We did.
And yeah, that's like kind of always remains a cool thing about the band, is that they seem to be pretty responsive. I don't feel like they set too many rules for themselves that are like ideals that they dare not cross. It seems like they're pretty like whatever they just happen to be feeling in the moment, they'll be like, okay, yeah, whatever, we'll play Screens, and we'll play it like super slow. Actually, this is unrelated, but I just remembered I was watching the movie right before this, and during those live shows, I remember that Panda Bear sometimes would change the lyrics on Screens to be that part where I don't even remember what he sings in the original, but he'd go, "I'd like to teach the world to sing." Like, like just ripping that line from "I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony," which I don't think is in the original song, but it just cracked me up that he would just started using that instead of whatever the original line was.
Maybe he just forgot. He was listening to that other song. It's like, it fits the meter.
Yeah, it's
fine.
close enough.
We never wrote down the lyrics for these.
Right.
Although, Jordan, you have the DVD. Does it comes with like a little booklet of pictures, but is there anything other than that? Is there like...
There's no like lyrics or anything like that. It's kind of like an art book.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I have that one too. It's awesome. It's a really cool art book.
Do either of you own the black ODDSAC shirt from like 4 years ago?
I wish.
I don't have any.
Well, you're in
shirts.
luck, because if you have $200, you can go on eBay and buy.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me.
I'm not. Go look it up right now. Go
my
search
God.
ODDSAC on eBay. It's one of the first things that pops up. Someone's selling a T-shirt for $200.
I'm gonna make my own, man.
Come on, yeah, you can definitely make your own.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
That's cool for
I was looking up the
somebody,
DVD
though,
because I was trying to see how much it was to get in this day and age. Which, hey, if you guys are listening, I'm sure doing a DVD run would be much cheaper than a Blu-ray run. That's all I'm saying.
Well, when I talked to Danny Perez back in 2020, like I mentioned that, like why not, upscale it, have a, because what was really interesting talking to him was that the way that it was made was, such a back and forth and that's why, like none of the lip syncing matches up and stuff like that, because
Well, he's an alien. It's fine.
but they had like a completely different set of songs. Like they like would shoot, sequences and then send that to the band. They'd work on a song, then they would send the song back to Danny. Then Danny would edit the footage around that song, but then send it back. They'd erase the audio entirely. So there's like several different versions of ODDSAC sitting on Danny Perez's hard drives where there's like, a whole different track list. And then like a whole different set of visuals.
I can see why this took 4 years to complete.
I have this deep, deep hope, which is related to the moniker I used to make Reaper Madness, Walked Like a Dog, which is that Glassland show in 2008. They played this amazing, honestly, like one of my favorite AV songs of in the outside mainline catalog.
Like I'm being walked like a dog. And how would I know if I was being walked like a dog? And would I understand to be walked like a dog?
But it's like, as I understand it, like that whole show was like them like kind of workshopping some stuff to footage that Danny had been putting together for ODDSAC.
Oh, yes,
and
I have seen that.
And there's like a weird like early version of like the beginning of Mr. Fingers in there, but it's like set to a completely different harmony and different like instrumentation. But like,
isn't there also a Panda Bear, was it the Tomboy tour, where he was playing ODDSAC like Tantrum Bar visuals in the background?
Oh, yeah. I bet probably, yeah.
It's either Tomboy or like the late Person Pitch era.
But that Walked Like a Dog song, that's the first song. It's like, it sort of seems like it's like it would be really, I could see why it didn't make the movie, because it seems to be like a song that A.B. wrote about like his grandmother getting dementia or something like that. It's very, very moving, very heartbreaking. But
that might have also been a Down There demo.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things that makes you love to hate this band and still love them nonetheless. Where you're like, this is like one of the most incredible songs I've ever heard, and you're not going to do anything with it. And I have this
song
like
for Jerome.
Yeah, I mean, all those songs are also heartbreaking that they don't exist anywhere other than the bootlegs. But like, yeah, that Walked Like a Dog song was my jam for a long time after I heard it, and it's the reason I took on the moniker for the Reaper Madness thing too. And I have this like deep-seated hope that somewhere in the archives of the ODDSAC material is like a fully fleshed out version of that song that just like got dropped on the cutting room floor, and like one day they're going to be like, surprise, it's actually done and perfectly mixed and mastered, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever heard in your life, and you're all going to cry now.
Well, it's funny because when I was talking to Danny about that, I was like, so, there's all these songs that are just recorded and you've just got them and no one's heard like all these, Animal Collective songs. He's like, yeah. And I was like, well, you should release like, you know, an updated version, and then include the different versions leading up to the final one.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's a good idea. And,
Oh.
I was like, well, you know, make it happen.
Yeah,
And he was
nice
like,
one, Jordan.
we'll see. Yeah,
I
so
like
it was-
a choose your own adventure ODDSAC.
I
Yeah,
definitely,
exactly.
once upon a time when I used to drink late at night, I was just like, I got the idea for a bit to DM Danny Perez on Instagram and be like, yo, where's ODDSAC 2? And I didn't think he would respond, but within like 12 hours, he's like, oh, yeah, I've been thinking about maybe doing that. And that was 2018. So I guess things change. But have any of y'all seen his movie Antichrist?
Anti-birth.
Anti-birth?
Whatever.
Yeah, I watched that one. What'd you think of it? I don't want to.
I haven't seen it. I've only seen the Welcome to the Funhouse music video.
Sure.
The 60-second AV Tear song.
It's okay.
Maybe because I keep searching for Antichrist and they're like, yeah, the Lars von Trier movie. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. I think my opinion of Anti-Birth, and I mean no shade to Danny Perez, but I think he should never be allowed to do a movie with dialogue. It's like, and it's like crazy because it's Natasha Lyonne and Chloe Sevigny, who are like fantastic, and it's visually like totally Danny Perez, but like the dialogue in that movie just fucking sucks. It is.
Are there any comparisons to Harmony Korine?
No,
Not
No?
really.
These are both filmmakers with whom I'm unfamiliar, at least in terms of their narrative storytelling.
Yeah.
Outside of ODDSAC, I guess.
Yeah, and he's so good. Well, this is like, and I really don't mean shade towards him because he is like, I just think he is so masterful with like visual overload and visual, like kind of like excess as disgust. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sort of like, for me, that whole Anti-Birth movie, it just seems like, it just strikes me that he was like trying to do something that was like a little bit more palatable for people. I don't mean to like project my narrative onto him.
Right.
Maybe that was like totally what he wanted to do, but it just struck me that he was like the studio he was working with, or like maybe a pressure he was feeling, was like making a more traditional narrative that was more palatable to a wide audience, and it just was like,
I think the
totally
artist in him couldn't gel with that system.
Totally. It just
And
felt
if
so
I recall
lifeless.
correctly from the ODDSAC featurette, I think he does talk kind of about how like it's much easier to make your art when you don't have a financier breathing down your neck. And ODDSAC was an example of just like pure unfettered creativity.
Totally.
So.
Totally. Yeah. And it's just like, he's so, and I mean, I kind of want to bring it back to ODDSAC about like some of these like visual texture moments. Like he's so magical with that stuff. Like the weird uses of like the patterned geo haunted face, like kind of looking like totally ethereal ghost. Like there's that scene where it's not green beans. It's like the other big static scene in the movie where it's like
Urban Cream.
Urban Cream. Yeah. Like the visuals in that, they're like, it's just incredible because they're like right on the edge of recognizability. Like every now and again you see like what he's making the pattern out of. Like there's a moment, and I might even be projecting this, I don't know if this is for real, but like I swear to God, I just see like a flock of bats, and that's what he's made the pattern out of, and I can just suddenly for a split second see legibly what the image is, and then it just completely turns into this like noise static again. It's a really incredible experience watching the way he deals with texture that way.
Yeah, and this is pre-AI too, so he was doing all that by hand.
Yeah.
I will say Urban Cream is probably the most boring part of this whole thing. And so much so that every time it plays, if I'm like watching it with people or just by myself, every time it comes on, I'm like, oh, I can use my phone or go take a piss, because I got 6.5 minutes where I don't need to be paying attention.
Well, I wonder, this is funny because I made a note when I was watching it, and this is like going to be maybe perhaps another age comment, but like I find that scene, every year I watch this movie, like that scene as I get older, the more I'm like, oh yes, some slowness. I've just come to appreciate that scene and the green bean scene like so much more in the movie, because it, like, to me it's like, I mean, the movie flies by, and it's also like a short movie, so it's like So like, and it's not to say anything bad about the other songs. I love the other songs, but it's like, to me, it's just like I find myself getting more and more drawn into these like droney, like nowheresville zones where I'm like, yes, this seems to, and I think I'm probably, it's a function of me just like getting stupider as I get older, where I'm like, I can't handle all this complexity. Like, just stay still for a second. I need to relax. Right. But I literally wrote a note that was like, when I was like watching it, I was like, getting older, like drones more, is the note I wrote myself.
I would agree with that. Because I feel like, but also, it's situational. I think, you know, it's like there's certain mind frames.
There goes the camera. Even if I charge it to 100%, it always dies if we go longer than 2.5 hours. So
that last little image, that was kind of haunting in itself.
Yeah, I like that.
It's like, what is going on?
Moment. You guys keep talking. I'm gonna get the webcam. So.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, what were you saying, Jordan?
What was I saying? Oh, yeah. That you know, those droney bits and stuff like that. That I don't know if it's necessarily like an aging thing or if it's just like a situational thing where it's just like I'm in that headspace sometimes, and maybe I'm in that headspace more often now that I'm getting older. But yeah, it's like something I can easily see myself skipping through, like or you know, being just on my phone or something, like you said, Greg. Whereas now, like, I'm kind of more in it. Mind you, I'm also like more stoned a lot of the time, so I think like being yeah. Yeah, so like, you know, watching just like minutes of static, there's something kind of like therapeutic about it, or, you know, mesmerizing, and
totally,
you know, I dig it, and it's a good, it comes in at the perfect time, I think, you know, even though it is kind of like more in the front half, I would say it's like it's
almost directly in the middle. It almost separates the first half and the second.
I guess you're right.
Yeah.
I guess you're right.
It does. I don't know exactly where in the timeline it falls, but it definitely does feel like part 1 is pre-Urban Cream and part 2 is post-Urban Cream. Like,
well, it almost works as like the third of a suite with like Screens and then Urban Cream and then Green Beans, Screens, and Urban Cream. I don't know why they rhyme, but maybe that also works in my favor of my argument, which is they do kind of just feel like this low-key, you know, sort of relaxing suite before you get back into the insanity of it all.
If I could take my eyes away, might not get so dry now.
Yeah,
It's true.
let's talk about Screens. That song rules.
So good.
It's so unbelievable. It's
Do you think the screens and the lyrics are literal?
I do, actually. I actually think, I mean, I interpret it as like, I mean, this is me projecting like my own like weirdo philosophy and politic onto it. But like, to me, that whole song is, and not, it's easy to be like, ooh, it's about smartphones or whatever. But I think it's a little bit more about like, or the way I read it is like, the way the screen interacts with us in our lives, which is funny to be talking about like on a Zoom call with each other, but like it's like the sort of two-dimensionality that viewing the world through a screen begins making the world appear. And I think it's like really there's a funny moment in that in the scene where at first it's sort of like, what does a vampire in a canoe have to do with like screens? But like when he's like, there's a moment in the song where I think it's during the Why Am I Seeing Screens or Why Am I Before Screens? It's the shot like Deacon kind of floats by and it's just the water, and the water's light starts like filling up more and more of the screen. And it's sort of like, and for me this time around, I was just like, oh yeah, this is the screen, like the glowing screen, like coming at me, like trying to get me. And I was even making the leap of being like, oh, and it's like interesting that Deacon's a vampire, and like what does that say about our relationship to screens? You know what I mean? But that's me like stretching a little bit, I think.
Well, I
can
think
see that though.
The screen at least comes across to me as more of just like a malaise, kind of like, you know, why am I seeing screens? As in like, why am I sort of giving myself my own sort of world to get lost in, to distract from all the, you know, bad shit around me, as opposed to just taking it all in at once. So like, why is it easier for me to dissociate than to just live in the moment?
Right, totally. Get lost in the two-dimensional abstract than the local reality and all the complexities that it has. The screens are sort of like the whole song. Like, why am I seeing screens? It's like, why do I have all these like screens around me? And even like you could take it in like a curtainy sense, like a windscreen or a screen that you put around you to like protect yourself. Like the word screen just has this like very like putting something in between yourself and something else quality to it.
Yeah. But I also don't think that there is any real aspect of, like doom scrolling or because this was written written while the iPhone was becoming a thing. So
totally.
It might even just be like computer screens from working while you're mixing, or just any number of things. But I agree with your initial assessment. It is a beautiful song. It's one of Panda's best vocal performances, which is saying something,
definitely,
considering who we're talking about. But I mean, it feels like one of the most realized songs on it, and it might have even been, I don't know the story behind it, but I would assume that it was already a song that he wasn't planning on including in this, but then when it came around to like bring what you got, we're gonna make this thing, that was one of them that he either brought to it or they worked on together, and then it just stuck, and through all the different iterations of the editing, survived. Or it could be that he wrote that song and then he showed it to them and they said, I have the perfect visual image in mind. Deacon, sad, vampire, canoe, dark.
Deacon's like, oh, why is it always me?
He was so upset with melting in a puddle and that day of shooting that he said, I'm not going to be on Merryweather Post Pavilion. Fuck you guys. I'm going to go to Africa and find myself. There's so much to absorb with this from viewing it, but like I think you can pick out certain songs that you don't need the visuals for and still enjoy them. But like I feel like if you're going to go all the way from start to finish, you kind of need the visuals, because otherwise you're just going to keep skipping stuff. Like this is not a driving album like you might think it is when you started out with Mr. Fingers, but then you get to the second or third song and you're like, oh, skip. So it really is just like something you need to sit down and like experience. So if it were on Spotify or whatever, or on vinyl, I don't think it would, like, maybe for those ultra fans that are just like, oh my God, I have this now, they might get some enjoyment out of it, but I don't think it'd be the same. I think if you're going to sit, if you really want to just sit in your room and stare at the wall for 6.5 minutes while Urban Cream is playing on your record player, probably not,
But they could, because DVD is obviously like an outdated format at this point, and it'll just continue to, become a relic of the past. Like what I'm kind of hoping for, my desire is that maybe, because next year will be 15-year, do like almost like a vinyl box set release where there is like the visual component, where there's like a DVD or a Blu-ray in there with other shit. There's the record with just the tracks, and then maybe a secondary record that has like some of the songs and their initial iterations, or Walk Like a Dog and stuff like that. That would be like, because then you get everything, And I think you're right, Greg. Like half of this album are like songs that you could listen to outside of the film, but then the other half are things that wouldn't make any sense really outside of the context of having the visuals. So I don't know. I would prefer to have it in both ways though still. So
totally.
All right, let's talk image quality.
Yeah.
Because I am a filmmaker after all, and we gotta so I feel like I was kind of getting onto it earlier with Inland Empire, where like a lot of the imperfections in the image are part of the charm of the overall aesthetic and the viewing experience of it. And I feel like with ODDSAC, it's definitely like there is just it dates it in a satisfying way, to where you just like feel like, yes, this is definitely of its time, to the point where there's like all these blocked pixels from the compression of the video not being able to keep up with how fast the movement is on screen. Totally. So there have been several attempts at AI upscaling by fans, not by the filmmaker, to try and enhance those visuals. And there's let me give a shout out to who it actually was, because this is the one I rewatched.
It's the It's
last
Mia
night.
one. That's the 4K upscale.
Well, because someone else did one like within the last year, but this one's from a few years ago. Yeah, It's Mia with 3 A's at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably, I really like how that one turned out. But even then, watching it, there are some sequences where it cuts to a shot and you're like, yeah, you can tell that the AI didn't know what to do with this. Like, I think it's that overhead shot of the riverbed just like flowing. And it's like, even with the 4K upscale, you're like, yeah, this was definitely shot in 540p. Like, there's no getting around those artifacts.
Yeah.
But there are so many other, like, you can tell when the machine knows what it's trying to enhance, where it looks great. But then there are other times, like, I think no matter what you do to Urban Cream with AI, it's not going to fix it. It's still going to look blocky and blurry and staticky. But that's by design, so, you know, maybe it's a good thing in the end. I wanted to get into this because, like I said, it's 540p. So, like, Jordan, you said he has all those versions of it on his hard drive. Mm-hmm. Question is, even if we get a 540, like, even if he, like, was able to miraculously open up the program, all the files are still there, and do a new render, would we be able to get anything better looking than what's on the DVD? Like with 2024 H.264 or whatever compression. Is that an option?
I mean,
or would he have to
not.
go through and put every shot individually into Topaz or whatever software to upscale it? I don't know. I also
think
don't
the
think
latter.
he needs to because of when it was made. Sorry. go
Exactly.
ahead.
And I think it does have its charm having that feel. So I don't think it's like anyone's gonna, you know, if they release the other cuts, the more raw they look, the more it'll work to its, you know, to its favor, I think.
Totally. I mean, it just reminds me of, like, you know, the sort of, I mean, the way the aesthetics of the past, like, come back and become sort of, you know, Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message vibe, where it's like I feel like a lot of the visuals on ODDSAC kind of work because of this, like, hyper compressed and, like, low quality image vibe.
Right, and it does feed into, like, the bleep bloopy, like, sporadic sound palette that a lot of the album has.
Totally.
It definitely it matches the visuals more than it should, just by virtue of being made at a certain point in time.
Totally. And I
Like,
think
if you shot this whole thing in if you shot this whole thing in 4K natively from the start, it would lose so much of what they were able to pull off. And so maybe DV was just a budgetary decision as the shooting format, but it also, I think, ended up enhancing the art just
totally
anyway.
And it's also, yeah, there's something so satisfying about, like, I mean, my partner and I were talking about, like, you watch, like, an old experimental movie from the 70s, it's on 16 millimeter, and it's like, there's something so satisfying about watching the way the medium just rises to be a part of the aesthetic that marks it in time, too. And I couldn't help but, like, think about, like, watching ODDSAC again. I was like, I don't think I would have ever picked this out as a quality when I first watched it, but now, like, watching it, I'm like, this reminds me so much of, like, Jackass and, like, all that Bam Margera shit that he was doing. Like, not that, like, aesthetically they're similar at all. It's just sort of like that. Suddenly it's just like, no, this is important. This is a sound of, like, 2000s, and this is the image of 2000s. Like, you kind of think to me, it seems like it's really important to honor and archive. And this is actually maybe contradicting what I was saying about not being super precious about these sort of things. But yeah, it seems like it's retroactively part of the aesthetic, and it's important to document. Like, that's an important part of the object and its life in and of itself. And changing it would be maybe I don't feel precious about the idea of changing it, but I also think, I guess I'm saying, like, the original aesthetic and its limitations have as much, like, right to be considered part of the whole image as anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
Plus,
sure.
everything Danny Perez does nowadays is so high quality anyway that it kind
That's
of
true.
It
Very different.
It earns its place in the pantheon of his work.
Totally.
But it could have been, like, also a very intentional choice to go with the mini DV thing for those reasons, because, you know, all these guys are, like, skate video fans, and all the skate videos and the
Right.
you know.
Song for Atiba and all that.
Totally.
Like that's all mini DV. So yeah, it does kind of have that, that jackass look to it, and that could have been very much an intentional choice.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really places it in that context. It really places it in that sort of like weird, like, I don't know, that whole era to me. I mean, I when I was growing up, I definitely saw Jackass and then like got a little mini DV camera from Best Buy or something and started like making stupid movies with my friends. And it's like, I mean, I don't know. There's something about that aesthetic that is like places it in the DIY scene of that time.
Contemporary.
Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, this is 2000s and this is the quality of 2000. I mean, you see it now. I definitely see people who like, I guess this is like part of like, like the TikTok aesthetic thing, but like you see people using like these old digital cameras now to kind of get that like sleazy indie aesthetic or whatever.
Or the VHS filter.
Yeah, like these sort of things where it's just like, yeah, it's like it's kind of moved from being like, oh, this is just a limitation of the technology to, oh, this is like an aesthetic quality that we're in and of itself
it's like,
is
with
interesting
film
to play
grain,
with.
the same thing, right?
Yeah,
When the aughts came around, everyone wanted to put digital film grain in their thing, like Grindhouse.
Exactly.
It is interesting that ODDSAC, like kind of going along with your saying, is sort of almost just like a way to cap off the aughts. Since it came out in 2010, they're just like, this is what the culmination of everything of this decade was. What's next?
And even like, yeah, right, like culmination of everything that the band had done up until that point. I mean, it was like a 4-year writing and making process, and even just like without that, knowing that fact, you can kind of feel it. Like the songs feel like as produced and high quality as anything off of Merriweather, but then there's all these nods that feel like they go back to like the sort of logic that they're working with in dance. Yeah, like the Dance Manatee Zone. And like like they're you're like, wait, these dudes are still like freaky noise heads too. And it's sort of like, I mean, no record to this date, no record of theirs I think better encapsulates the entirety of what they're about than the music and visuals of ODDSAC. I think it's sort of I feel like definitive as like there's almost a world where I'm like, if somebody doesn't know what AC is about and I'm like, they really want to know what they're about, I'd be like, watch this first, you'll get everything, and then you can figure out what parts you want to explore from there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think horror heads, like unfamiliar with the band, just stumbling on this, do you think they would get it? Do you think they'd be into it at all?
I don't know. I showed my partner, who's like a huge horror head, this movie, and I think she was kind of, and I think she was like more like, oh, it's pretty cool. I think it reads more experimental than horror to the non. We
need more experimental horror. Damn
I agree.
Everything is so cookie cutter. Even the A24 breaking the mold is cookie cutter now, just by virtue of time passing and imitators.
I mean, I totally agree. I feel like, and it's funny because like my partner's like a huge Lynch head too, so it seems like there would be more overlap. But like that aesthetic of like the non-narrative Lynchian approach to just like uncomfortable psychological atmosphere, like it seems like that would translate more. But in my experience, whenever I've shown any of my friends who are like not deeply AC heads and maybe more in the horror camp, it doesn't quite translate as horror to a lot of my friends.
Yeah, well, with regards to Lynch too, it's like his filmography, there is normal stuff and there is weird stuff, and when they're rarely on screen at the same time, they're both very separated from each other. So it is almost just like going from Merriweather to ODDSAC. When you go from the Double R Diner to the Black Lodge in Twin Peaks. Jordan, that's a Twin Peaks reference. You'll understand eventually. Probably not though.
Jordan, have you not watched Twin Peaks?
He doesn't watch TV shows. He only watches movies or miniseries. He's insane. He's missing out on so much good.
Just watch the entirety of Twin Peaks in one sitting, so it will be like a movie.
It's only 51 hours.
Seems like an easy task.
So easy.
He's never going to watch Mr. Robot. He's never going to watch Better Call Saul. I might actually have to kill him just out of the anger I have at him for not watching TV shows.
At this point, there's so much stuff that people recommend. It's impossible for me to watch it all. I'll die.
I have 1,400 ratings on IMDb since 2009, and I still feel overwhelmed with the amount of new shit coming out. To where it's
my
just like,
God.
if
It's stressful.
no one I know is involved, I'm not going to check it out because it's just too much.
It's totally
much.
stressful. Yeah, I really, I mean, I'm honestly not much of a TV head myself. Twin Peaks was just like a special exception because, yeah, everybody in my life was like, dude, you have to watch this show
Because it's amazing, and it's there's nothing quite like it. Much like ODDSAC, unless I was going to ask you guys about transverse temporal gyrus. Do you think there's any overlap, at least with the production lore, because I mean the whole idea behind that is just like, yeah, we're going to take all these scraps of ideas and then put it through an algorithm, and then whatever order it spits it out in, that's the record. So I'm wondering if any of that batch was ODDSAC fragments that they never used in one of the previous versions of it on the hard drive.
Oh, that's a really interesting theory. Yeah, I mean, it seems, I never thought about that, but that seems almost undoubtedly what happened because they're so close together. Danny was involved in both, and like, yeah, like that. Where else would have these scraps have come from?
Yeah, and it's like, have you seen the video of them doing the Guggenheim show? And they're even wearing costumes like ODDSAC and everyone. There's like audience participation. So I mean, I wish that there was a full version of that out there as opposed to that like 6-minute sizzle reel, if you will. But that's a DVD I would buy. So if they did reprint this, I don't think a Blu-ray would be the right way to go about it, because blowing up a 540p image without AI upscaling, it's not going to look good. Especially considering that's twice the resolution that you're artificially creating by stretching it out. So I think a DVD would probably still be the right way to go. Not only just because of it being a low-budget indie movie, so it'd be easier to afford. I mean, I think the fans would jump all over it, so it wouldn't be as much of a financial risk. But
do people
it also
even
is
have
just
DVD
it's too much of a
players?
rarity to not have around available. What were you saying?
I just bought a DVD player. Jordan was asking if people still have DVD players. I just bought one off of a person by my library. She was like sitting outside and she was like, "You want this DVD player? It's $5." And I was like,
"See, that's what you got to do though these
Hell
days.
yeah.
Like, you have
even
to buy it off
$5
of
seems like
somebody,
too much for a
you know?
DVD player.
It, honestly, it didn't even have a power cord. I was like,
you have to go find a generic DC cord on eBay or whatever.
Maybe
I just
the
got a
way to do
region-free
it-
Blu-ray player, so
Oh, that's sick.
maybe release it in Japan and I can still watch it. I don't know.
The maybe the way to do it is to do the Tangerine Reef thing, where they just make it streamable on some site or something like
Vimeo.
that. On Vimeo, but like, I don't know, maybe they could, do the vinyl release, finally separate, the music from the visuals, but then have like that kind of bonus features.
Do
or,
the
like, other
download card
iterations or
thing,
something.
where
Yeah,
if you buy the
download card, that could
vinyl,
work.
you just type in a code on Vimeo and you own it in perpetuity as opposed to just renting it.
That makes sense, because then they don't have to expend, like whatever production costs are associated.
And then if you
with
didn't
putting
buy
out
the vinyl, you just buy the Vimeo.
right.
There you go. If you're
These
listening,
are all ideas.
if you're
I'm
listening.
used to looking at this camera, but now it's here. These are all ideas. We're giving you gold.
Yeah.
We just need someone like, Mark Cuban or whoever to come along and just be like, here's a bunch of money. Do whatever you want.
Mark, are you listening, Mr. Cuban?
He's getting ready
all
for
of one
the
listener.
next
these-
Mavs season.
Yeah, all these guys need to start picking up on these ideas, man.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys attend? We were talking a little bit about this. You guys attended the 20th, like the virtual 20th, not 20th. I was going to say 20th anniversary. Jesus Christ.
The 2020
the
10th
2020
anniversary.
10th anniversary with the DJ sets and all that, and Geologist's solo hurdy-gurdy set.
Yeah.
That was great.
I
I didn't know that was going to be like the your movie is about to start music, but
Right.
it was such a perfect way to especially with like, because Danny, I think he said he was editing all the visuals for those DJ sets too. So by the time the stream came around, he's like, yeah, I pretty much just gave myself carpal tunnel in the last few days. And I don't doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of almost feel like if to anybody who might be listening who hasn't watched the movie yet, I would say those are worth watching in and of themselves. Like the mixes are all great. Like
but do it in the stream order for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Deacon's mix on that is like incredible. It's like I put that mix on all the time whenever I'm cooking. It's like so good, and the editing on that, he has this like, it's such a cool look. He has this mask on his top of his head and he's looking down the entire time, but it makes it so the mask is like looking like it's looking right at you. And then Danny does like, you know, a video echo effect on it, so it's just like becomes this like long like face worm. And the music, it's it's so cool. And I'm trying to, there's one song on there that's like a dude who was making a ton of really grimy like techno music in the mid-aughts, whose name I'm totally spacing, but it's like, it is like one of the coolest, darkest songs ever. And it's like the way Deacon's like kind of like mixing it, he's like doing some things to it. It's just, I guess all I'm saying is like, don't skip out on those. Those are really cool.
I don't know if I've ever revisited them, but I do remember the ending of AV's set having the Silver Shamrock song from Halloween 3, is it?
Yep.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Happy Halloween, Halloween.
And Dave's doing like that Dave dance he does.
Oh yeah, they're like just like, oh, whatever, it's over now. Let's be goofy for a little bit. Yeah. And it was Halloween, so it was a nice way to wrap up the evening.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
That's that whole order of it, just like, and the fact that Panda's, did he even add visuals, or was it just him sitting in his chair like with the LED lights?
There are visuals, but at the center you can just see like Panda like facing. It's like it's so funny how like, you know, like the way their personalities get presented through the presentation matrix. Like, I don't, you know, obviously like we all probably have like our weird parasocial relationship with this band because we have our like fixation with it. And I think that's a beautiful thing too, but it's just like funny, the weird inferences I make about their personalities through these things. And like Panda being like back to the camera, like not looking at the camera the entire time, like just kind of swiveling.
Gaming.
Yeah, like it's like, it just strikes me as somehow like, without knowing this person at all, I'm like, this is the most fucking Noah Lennox thing I could imagine. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, just like, oh, the dude's just sitting in his swivel chair, not even looking at the camera.
I think this is one of those bands though, where the way they present themselves, you are sort of able to get a somewhat solid grasp on what they're like as a person.
Definitely.
At least through their art. But even then, they'll still find ways to surprise you.
Definitely.
Where like, you're like, oh, you're also just a normal person and not this, you know, art hippie.
Totally. So. Yeah. And I certainly definitely don't want to imply that I think they're doing anything inauthentic. It's just,
right.
I
think any performer is going to present a version of themselves that may not be the most, like, it's streamlined. It's not going to be raw and uncut unless you're, you know, there are specific artists out there that are like that, but
totally. I just love like I love just getting into like, I don't know, like just like I'm a kind of a, how would I describe it? I think too much is how I describe it, and I love like picking apart my own relationship to this thing where I'm like why do I even have this supposition about like this person who's I only know through his music, where I'm like, oh, that's so you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's so right. Interesting to me that I have this like particular kind of relationship. And I don't, I definitely don't want to, I don't know if I'm coming across as sounding like I'm casting shade on that kind of relationship, but I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's
inevitable with art that is this like available emotionally as everything they put out.
Totally.
And, I mean, it's not like they need a podcast to sort of express that.
Right. Yeah, you just can't help but form these relationships, and these relationships are significant even though they have this like weird distance in them. Yeah, maybe on just like to put it in like a super basic communication, it's just telepathy. Like somehow we just, and again, I don't want to assume I know anything. Bro. Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to assume I know anything about their lives, but like in some sense, I'm just like, I don't know. I get the sense that like something about the way this music is presented, I'm like, oh yeah, I relate to the world in a similar way, and I can't help but form this like sort of emotional relationship to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, for me with Animal Collective, it's always felt like this weird kind of combination of their music feeling intuitive, but also not in a way that like, you know, I know loads of people that I show Animal Collective music to, and they just don't get it, you know, like, you know, like even something on Merryweather, I'll be like, hey, you'll probably love this though. And they're like, no. And I'm just like, you know, what is it about that person? They like all these other bands that I like, but Animal Collective, it's just not clicking for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think it's
je ne
because
sais quoi.
yeah, it's just like everything. It's, you know, just like there's something, you know, being a musician myself and like the music that I write that, you know, for whatever it is, whether it's like, you know, just a bunch of experiences that have been sponged up and are coming out in this creative outlet, matches whatever I think, you know, and again, like I don't know what's going on inside these people's heads, you know, the members of Animal Collective, but whatever it is, it feels like it's aligning perfectly with what I would do if I were to make those decisions. But at the same time, I haven't made those decisions, but somebody else is making them for me almost. It's kind of
I
hard
think
to
I get what you're saying. It's like if some like, you know, throwaway track, or like if there's something that's made by one of these guys that I'm not gonna like, if I listen to it and I'm like, you know, I'm not probably ever gonna listen to this again, but it's undeniably them. Like no one else is gonna make something like this. So even if, I think it's also, I will keep repeating this forever. They're an experimental band, and not every experiment is a success. So if something doesn't work for you, there's something else in their discography that will. So if you don't like ODDSAC, that's fine. You'll probably like something that's more accessible, or maybe even less accessible, that just hits a certain, you know, neuron in your brain in the right way. Yeah. And it just feels like it's always sort of been a part of your experience of this thing we call life. So, well, on that philosophical, existential note, I think that's going to do it for our ODDSAC episode.
Philosophical note. My favorite way to end.
And then we always get meta where we talk about how shitty the podcast is, but we're going to try and escape that this time. Ethan, thank you for sitting down with us.
Yeah,
we appreciate having another perspective every time, but especially someone that's as, you know, on the pulse with all this crazy Anko fandom as we are.
Yeah. No, it's been an absolute treat. I really appreciate you guys having me on and giving me some time to talk with y'all. It's been an absolute blast.
All right. And if you guys haven't, which, I mean, this episode's going to be out before the album anyway, but as a reminder from the previous episode, Ethan's band Fun Facts, is that what it's called? Has an album coming out called Apartment Rock, November 22nd. I'm assuming it's just going to be like streaming and Bandcamp and everywhere you get your music.
All the digital sources.
Go check that out. Check out the singles. And go check out Reaper Madness if you haven't, which we probably should have said at the end of the last episode. But, yeah, just there's just something about a fan mix that, you know, scratches a certain itch that other things don't. And that one in itself, I feel like I probably, if I'm in the mood for the Grim Reaper era, I will most likely go back to that mix over the actual, like, you know, what's on Apple Music or whatever.
That's awesome to hear. I'm glad you guys like it. We're
waiting on your ODDSAC fan mix is what I'm saying.
Once they start playing,
it's just going to be
live,
screens and working.
Yeah.
For now.
Otherwise, same songs.
Right.
But yeah, I would love to make another fan mix. Maybe we can collab someday.
Maybe. I mean, shit, you've got 8 versions of Reset to go with. I mean, go crazy, you know? You got the original samples you can pull from.
Good point.
Do a whole thing.
Interesting.
I think you probably could with, like, Save the Last Dance for Me, go right from the 50s song to Living in the After and stuff like that. So,
that's a
you know,
fun
just
idea.
have fun with it. When you're not making your own great music, you can fiddle around with some others that you didn't make. So, all right, well, thanks for watching, listening. We'll be back next month with something, but it'll still be this podcast. Everyone, have a spooky Halloween, and don't drink and drive. If you're going to drink, do it at home like a cool guy.
Yeah, drink and
like,
bike. Oh, no, wait, don't do that either.
Do whatever you want, just don't kill other people.
Yeah, there you go.
Or the president.